Hello, this is Jenny Cochran with Fullness of Grace, and we have today with us Father Quan Tran, and he's going to share with us his conversion story. So, Father Quan, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you grew up and what your life was like as a young person?
All right. Well, I guess part of that conversion story should be my vocation story too. So I think, when it comes to my vocation, it has to start back even before I was born. So I'll just tell you a quick story that's been passed down in the family. Is that when I was in Vietnam, I'm from Vietnam, and my family, when my grandfather was 12 years old, his mother was really sick. So that was my great-grandmother, and she was deadly ill, and the doctors did not give her a chance. And at that time, my family was not Catholic, and my great-grandfather was walking home from the hospital, very distraught, and he happened to pass by St. Joseph's Catholic Parish. This is back in northern Vietnam. I would say probably in the 1910 or so, 1915. And so he was desperate. So there was a statue of St. Joseph there. And so he went up to the statue of St. Joseph. He knelt down and started to pray to St. Joseph. This is his first time praying to a Catholic saint. And he prayed that St. Joseph would save his wife, that would heal her, that would make her better. And he promised that if she would get better, that the family would convert to Catholicism. And that night, both my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother had the same dream. They saw somebody who came into her room and took out her organs and replaced them with new organs. And in the morning, she was completely healed. She was completely healed. And my great-grandfather and grandmother shared their dreams. They had the same dream. And in fact, she was healed. And the doctors were baffled. They couldn't explain it. But they knew what happened. And so shortly after that, my great-grandparents and my grandfather were baptized. They became Catholics. And so I think it started back then that with my conversion story and my vocation story, it started even before I was born. And so my mom became Catholic when she married my dad, because that's on my dad's side, my grandfather on my dad's side. So even with that miracle, even with that great gift, the family was really never really devout, not really devout. I just remember my grandmother was the one. And my grandmother converted to Catholicism when she married my grandfather. And so, but she was the one who kept the faith. She was the one who told everybody that to receive their sacraments, to go to church, to pray the rosary. She was the anchor. She was the pillar that kept everybody to practice their faith. And so after the fall of Saigon in 1975, our family escaped Vietnam by boat. We were one of the first wave of boat people that left Vietnam in search of freedom. And so my family ended up in the Philippines, in Guam, in Arkansas, and then in Denver. We had a sponsor in Denver that sponsored us. And so I grew up in Denver. Again, it was a miracle that we left Vietnam safely, and we ended up in Denver. And so growing up in Denver, we would attend church on Sundays. Again, not really devout. God is working in our lives incredibly, but my family was never really devout. We were, I guess, lukewarm Catholics. You go to church on Sundays, you receive the sacraments, but my grandmother said, we would pray the rosary and things like that, but never really devout. So growing up in Denver, my family would never talk about the priesthood, never religious life or the priesthood. My father was an entrepreneur, a go-getter, and so he started out with nothing, and then he built up different businesses and became very successful in the world. And so that's what he wanted for me as well. I'm the oldest of four, And so that's what he wanted for me, was to be successful in the worldly sense. He wanted me to have a good education, have a good career, just be really well off and successful in the eyes of the world. And so he never talked about the priesthood or anything. And then we moved to Orange County my junior year of high school. I finished high school and then went off to college. And like so many of our college-age people these days, you start to drift away from the faith. Once you're kind of on your own and you're independent, you're free to do whatever you want. And usually, church or God or faith just isn't a priority at that point. It was more, friends, partying, even doing well in school to get a good job. It was exploring the world, and God was not a priority at that point. So I stopped going to church. I was focused on other things, like I said, friends and partying and family and school and all those things. And so I'd go to church once in a while. I'd come back home during Christmas and we'd go to Mass or Easter. But I'd kind of fallen away from the faith. Lived a very secular lifestyle. And so after college, I went to law school. I went to law school again. Even in law school, again, focus on doing well in school to get a good job. God just was not a priority. So I was probably going to church maybe a couple times a year, when I got together with my family. And so, but God was very patient with me. God was very patient with me, just waiting for me to kind of live out my dreams, my pursuit of worldly things. So I graduated from law school, got a good job, and bought a house, had a BMW, and I was dating beautiful women, and so God was still very patient with me. And at that time, I realized my job at that time, I was thinking about doing something else, maybe changing jobs or even changing careers. I reached a point in my life where I didn't feel fulfilled, that there was something missing. Even though I had a great job, a house, a car, I had dogs, I had a girlfriend, everything was working out, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. Something was missing. And I thought a change of career might be, or change of jobs might be the answer. And so I started to brainstorm, but nothing felt right. So at the same time, God was bringing me back to the church. And it started out with one woman that I was dating. And she happened to be a very good Catholic. And she asked me to go back to church with her. And so I started going back to church with her just to make her happy, right? It wasn't really the right reason, but it got me going back to church on Sundays. So I find myself going back to church with her on Sundays. And things didn't work out between us, and so we parted ways, but I continued to go to church. By that time, I was going to church on Sundays and practicing my faith. And then the next woman that I was dating was also a very good Catholic, and she introduced me to other aspects of the faith. She introduced me to the Rosary. I started praying the Rosary again. I know we prayed the Rosary when I was growing up, but I stopped doing that in high school, and so I started to pray the Rosary again. She introduced me to Eucharistic adoration for the first time, and I would go to Eucharistic adoration. And she was a extraordinary Eucharistic minister, and she got me involved with that at the church as well. And prayer life, and I was really practicing my faith deeply for the first time in my life. And she introduced me to daily Mass as well. Daily Mass, a foreign concept to me. And so, but I was going to daily Mass, believe it or not. After work in the evening, I would go to daily Mass. So going to daily Mass, praying the Rosary, going to Eucharistic adoration, going to confession more regularly, I was really practicing my faith, really immersing myself in the faith for the first time in my life. And so during this time, I was having, the thinking about changing careers, changing jobs, and so and nothing felt right. I wanted to do something that I was happy, that I was passionate about. I didn't just want to do another job just for a paycheck, because that's what I had, and I wanted something else, something more meaningful. And so I started to pray, and turning to the Lord, I asked Him to help me, to reveal to me what He would like me to do, what I'm supposed to do, because I couldn't think of anything that I really wanted to do, and I wasn't really fulfilled. And so after that prayer, the woman that I was dating asked me out of the blue if I ever thought about becoming a permanent deacon. And I had never thought of that. I figured, I'm a lawyer, I'm done with school. I figure becoming a deacon, I'd probably have to go back to school, and I don't want to go back to school. I'm too old for this. I'm about 36 at the time, and so I told her no, I've never thought about becoming a permanent deacon. And other people as well asked me if I ever thought about the priesthood. So after this prayer to God to reveal to me what I'm supposed to do, about 4 different people asked me about the diaconate and the priesthood. And I had never ever thought about the priesthood, but people from different places just came up to me.
How much time was it since that prayer that this started happening? Was it like right away?
Right away.
Oh, wow.
Right away.
Yeah.
Within days, within a week.
Wow.
So within a month period after that prayer, 4 different people asked me about the priesthood and the diaconate. And like I said, I'm 36 at the time, and up until that point in my life, no one had ever asked me that before. It was never brought up. And all of a sudden, after the prayer, 4 different people from different locations just asked me about the priesthood and the diaconate. And I had no idea, what it takes to be a deacon or a priest. And so I got on Google and started to research. And the more I read, the more I researched, the more I was drawn to the priesthood. And I couldn't explain it. It was exciting. It was scary at the same time. Because I know that the priesthood requires celibacy, and that was never part of my plan. That was never part of the equation. I was dating. I wanted to find the right person to settle down, to start a family, and so giving all that up was never part of the plan. And so it was scary at the same time. But at the same time, I felt drawn to the priesthood. That somehow this is what I was supposed to do. And sometimes people ask me, well, why didn't you become a permanent deacon? That way you can have the best of both worlds. Well, God doesn't work that way, right? Again, it's not my choice. It's not something that you just wake up one morning and said, you know what, I think I'm going to be a permanent deacon, or I'm going to be a priest. It's a supernatural call. And God touches your hearts, and He calls you to it. And it's subtle but powerful at the same time.
So when you say that God doesn't work that way, are you saying that in this case God wasn't calling you to the permanent diaconate, but He could for someone else?
Sure, yeah. Exactly, right. Yeah, because God's way of thinking is not our ways. Because sometimes when people talk logically, they said, well, if you wanted to start a family and you wanted to get married and have a family and you wanted to serve God, why didn't you pick the diaconate? But God wasn't calling me to the diaconate.
I see.
Yes, he may call somebody else to that, of course, but not to me. He speaks to us individually. To me, he just put into my heart, like, it's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. If I'm going to serve God, I'm going to give Him my life. I can't say, I can't give you this part of my life and I want to hold this part back. And there was this desire for all or nothing. And it was the priesthood, the celibacy part was scary, but at the same time attractive, if that makes sense. It was scary, but at the same time attractive. There was something attractive about just giving your whole life to the Lord. About being a priest. And at that time, I just felt drawn to the priesthood, that this was what God wanted me to do. And so I started to pray and to talk to people and to talk to the girlfriend that I was dating. And it was so fortunate that she was such a good Catholic that she understood that this was a supernatural call. And so she was very supportive of my discerning my vocation, whatever that may be. And so that was wonderful. She was very supportive during this discernment period. And God just put me in touch with the right people. He helped me to grow closer to Jesus. And I have to mention Mary during this time. I felt really close to Mary for the first time in my life. Growing up, I was never really close to Mary. Was never really close to Jesus. But all of a sudden, during this time, I felt Mary really close to me. And I felt attracted to Mary. I loved looking at her images. Every time I'd see an image of Mary, I felt drawn to her, and I felt her really close to me. At this point, I can say that I felt closer to Mary than I was to Jesus, even though I felt Jesus in my life as well. So somebody introduced me to a priest who became my spiritual director to help me discern my vocation. And all this stuff about spiritual direction and discernment and vocation was just completely new to me, right? It's a wholly different world than what I'm used to. And so I continued to do that. And there were a couple of events that I want to mention that helped me discern my vocation. One was Cursillo retreat. Somebody introduced me to Cursillo, and I made my retreat October of 2005. And so that was a powerful experience for me. There were 4 of us there at that retreat who were discerning the priesthood. And I was one of them. And it was such a powerful weekend for me. I'd never experienced anything like that. The love, the joy, the sacrifice of the people involved in Cursillo. And this, at that time, was at Marywood. And they would have scripture quotes just put on the wall in the gym. And there was one quote that really stood out to me, and it was, "Be it done to me according to thy word. Be it done to me according to thy word." And we know that comes from Mary, her fiat. And I felt Mary was telling me at the same time to make that my own, and that as her son is to take after her, is to make her fiat my own, to say to the Lord what she said to the Lord, "Be it done to me according to thy word." And so, again, I'm drawn to this vocation, to the priesthood. I'm drawn to saying yes to God, right? Be it done to me, whatever your will is. And so that weekend, again, Mary, I felt really close to Mary, felt her love, her intercession, her guidance, her support. And that was a very powerful weekend for me. Another incident I remember that was very powerful for me was after Mass one day, after receiving communion and going down and kneeling, and I was just looking up at the crucifix, and I'm struggling. You know, I feel drawn to the priesthood, but at the same time, it was really hard for me to give up not having a wife, not having a family, because that was what I wanted. That was what I was looking forward to. And I said, and I remember just speaking to Jesus. I said, you know what, this is really hard for me. I'm not sure if I can do this. If you want me to be a priest, you have to help me. You have to help me give this up, you know, give up being married, give up having a wife and a family. And so that night I went to bed, and then the next morning I woke up with this song in my head. It's a song that I had heard before, but I hadn't heard in a while. And the song is from the 70s, and the title of the song is Everything I Own. Everything I Own, and the band is called Bread. And so I woke up singing the refrain to myself, singing, I would give up everything I own, give up my life, my heart, my home. I would give up everything I own just to have you once again. And so I went to the computer and looked up the whole lyrics of this song. And when I read the lyrics, and I read the meaning to the lyrics, the song was about a son losing his dad. His dad had passed away, and him was lamenting missing his father and saying that he would give up everything just to have his father back again. And when I read the lyrics, I felt God was speaking to me, saying to me that at this point I have a window of opportunity to say yes to him. And if I don't, that opportunity will go away, right? The window will close, and I will one day regret it. And at some point I will say, you know, I will give up everything I own just to have that opportunity to say yes again. And so that's what I felt God was saying. And it's so true, because I was 36 years old, I was dating, so it was either now or never, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't have another 20 years to discern.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, the window of opportunity is now. Either you say yes to me now about the priesthood, or you're going to regret it later.
Yeah.
You know? And so that, again, that was another sign, just a powerful way of God confirming for me my vocation. And maybe just one more story. As I'm discerning, as I'm moving forward, I meet another lady, and she's really nice. And I told her right away. I told her, you know, I'm discerning the priesthood. That way, you know, we don't have any confusion or develop any feelings or anything like that. But feelings started to develop from both of us, and so again, I'm turning to God in prayer and saying, "Okay, God, why now? Right? I'm following your path. I think you're calling me to the priesthood, and now I meet this incredible woman, and she's Catholic. She's also a lawyer, and she's very talented, and we're developing feelings for each other. So what's going on?" And I felt God saying to me, I want you to make a conscious choice. I don't want you later on becoming a priest and just thinking in the back of your mind, I became a priest because I did not meet the right one. I became a priest because I did not meet the right person. Well, here is the one for you, and I want you to make a choice. I'm still calling you to the priesthood, but I want you to make a conscious choice. If you want to marry her and have a family with her, I will bless your marriage, but I'm calling you to the priesthood, and I want you to make a free choice. And so that's what, and so it made sense to me, right? Because up until that point, I could say that I didn't meet the right one, right? And so here it is, potentially the one, and so God wanted me to make a choice, not to become a priest because I didn't find the right person, but here it is. This might be the right person, but God wanted me to make that choice, to give that up, to give her up, to give that life up for him in the priesthood. And with prayer and grace, and God gives you the grace, I was able to say goodbye to her. And it wasn't easy, but God gave me the grace to really choose him and to choose the priesthood. And even while in the seminary, my spiritual director would tell me, you're just saying yes to the seminary at this point. Even while you're going to seminary, you're continually discerning, because just because you're entering the seminary doesn't mean you're actually called to the priesthood. So try it out. So my first year, I tried out the seminary. It was with a religious order, and they were based in Boston. So I went with them, and it was really difficult. I would have to say that first year was really difficult for me because it was a huge transition. Having my own house, my own car, my own job, I would come and go as I pleased, and all of a sudden living in a small religious community, having to do things that the community tells you to do, and doing that with people, with certain people. There was other seminarians there, so I would have to live with them, work with them, clean with them, pray with them, eat with them, recreate with them. We did everything together. Yeah. So this was my new family, my new life, and it was very, very difficult, very challenging. But I persevered. I finished the year, and then I continued to discern. And by the end of that year, I felt that God was not calling me to be with that order, with that life. And so my spiritual director said, well, why don't you try the Diocese of Orange? Try the Diocese of Orange before saying, you know, you're done with the priesthood. Because at that point, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I figured, okay, should I go back? Because this girl was still available. Should I go back? But my spiritual director said, no, give the diocese a try. And so I talked to the diocesan vocations director and tried the Diocese of Orange. And then I went to Menlo Park, St. Patrick's Seminary in Menlo Park, and everything just came together. I felt at ease, I felt at peace, everything fell into place. And so it really worked out. But even during my time in seminary, I would pray, God, if you really don't want me to be a priest, just let me know, and I'd be happy to go back into the world. But every year God would just confirm for me, this is what I want you to be.
And how did your family take to this?
Not kindly. They were shocked. They were shocked. So when my family first heard that I was thinking about the priesthood, my dad at that time wanted to see me right away. He wanted to have lunch and to talk. And so I explained to him, but he still did not understand. Again, my family was not very devout, just lukewarm Catholics. So he thought I was throwing my life away. He thought I was making a big mistake. He could not understand or appreciate it. And even when I was in the seminary, my dad, God bless his heart, would try to talk me out of it. You know, he would say, okay, have you gotten it out of your system? You can come back to the world now. But I said I'd be happy to if this was what God wanted me to do, but I feel God is calling me to the priesthood. So my family was shocked. I remember the first Christmas, I think it was the Christmas of 2005. I mentioned it during, we had a big family Christmas gathering. I mentioned it to some people, and they started to talk, and there was an intervention. There was like an intervention. Everybody got together and said, what's going on? What are you doing? There was only one aunt who said, no, leave him alone. Just let him discern God's call for him. But everybody else was saying, you're throwing your life away. You're making a huge mistake. Why would you want to do that? It doesn't make any sense. But I persevered, with God and His grace. I just persevered. And I was telling them and telling my, we did a psychological evaluation before you go into seminary too. And sometimes people would ask me, why do you want to become a priest? And I would say, it's not, I don't want to become a priest. God wants me to become a priest. Right? Because that's what I felt. Because sometimes people want to be a priest because they want to help people, they want to serve people, whatever. I felt like God wanted me to be a priest, so that's why I wanted to be a priest. There was nothing I could really articulate about, okay, I want to be a priest because I want to, hear confessions or celebrate Mass. No, I want to be a priest because I felt God wanted me to be a priest. This was out of love for God,
That's what He made you for.
Right,
yeah,
right.
That was your true vocation.
And up until my ordination, my family was still kind of resistant, but then they finally accepted. And they felt, and they started to appreciate the blessing. Other people came up to my family and say, well, thank you for giving us your son, or what a blessing it must be to have a son as a priest. And so my family started to come around and to really appreciate the priesthood. And it's a huge blessing for me.
Yeah. Oh, I've really enjoyed hearing your story. I can't help think that it brings so much hope to people in today's world, because with so many people leaving the faith and going, like in college, stop practicing the faith, and those witnesses of those women, although you weren't called to marry them, but they brought you back. And so all of us are called to be witnesses like that, where we can invite people back to the sacraments, invite people back to prayer and the rosary. And so I think there's a lot of hope. And then also the role of the grandparents in forming, because now I think that that's a huge opportunity in today's world for grandparents to actually pass on the faith. And maybe all the prayers of your grandparents and great-grandparents, you're the fruit of those prayers, your vocation.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it goes to show that God works through people, that God works through us, right, to accomplish His will.